I got a couple questions, Michael. Just looking, obviously, you're structured. First, do you see a Bitcoin ETF eventually getting approved here? Obviously, your Grayscale is one of the only ways. If you're looking at, at investing, it's not that easy. Do you think eventually? I know we're seeing in Canada, we saw ETFs get approved here now. Do you think eventually an ETF is going to get approved in the U.S.?
I do think it eventually will get approved. I think what we're seeing now is, an increasingly mature market. This rally and the price appreciation that we've seen in the asset class does in fact look very different than what we experienced in 2017. The market is much more two-sided. We've seen the launch of derivatives, a lot more players in the market, and so it is really beginning to mature. So here in the US, it'll be a matter of when, not so much a matter of if. And the addition of new products or new ability for investors to gain exposure to this asset class, we view generally as a good thing, and almost kind of creates this normalizing or normalization of crypto, if you will.
Is that something you guys would participate in then, is launching an ETF if you had the ability to do that?
I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I mean, I think the important thing to note for those, listening to this is that investors aren't waiting for an ETF, right? That's probably the most important aspect of this. Investors are not sitting on the sidelines and not getting involved in crypto because there isn't an ETF yet. And we're seeing, ever more participation in the market across everything from retail investors all the way to the other end of the spectrum, endowments and pensions, and now even corporates.
So, Mike, what is the impact of crypto or Bitcoin ETFs on Grayscale products?
Well, I think it's going to open up the product to potentially an even wider audience. I think, as you guys know, our two largest products are Grayscale Bitcoin Trust and Grayscale Ethereum Trust became SEC reporting companies. And that certainly provided some additional air cover for investors to participate, because SEC reporting means that investors get to enjoy the same protections and disclosure obligations that they get when they invest in other public companies or ETFs or other investment instruments or access products. And so I think that certainly broadened the group of investors that felt that this was now actionable for them. And so I would venture to guess that the approval of an ETF would widen the actionability of this to an even wider audience of investors.
I'm just taking that question further, because in Canada, what we just saw happen was QBTC, which was, not an ETF, but obviously investing in Bitcoin. And I don't know if you're familiar with the product or not, but once they approved an ETF in Canada, what we saw was QBTC was trading at a substantial premium because there wasn't a lot of ways to get into Bitcoin. What happened was they approved a couple, they've got a couple ETFs now in Canada, Bitcoin ETFs. What we saw was that premium came out immediately out of QBTC because you've got the creation redemption aspects of an ETF. Are you concerned at all that, that could happen? And is there any way that, because obviously GBTC trades at a premium over the markets or over the NAV, are you concerned that that premium could come out? And is there any way for you to roll that over into an ETF if you had that opportunity?
There's certainly the ability to roll it into an ETF. I think ultimately the price at which these products trade is really driven by the market, and is really a function of sentiment and participation. But perhaps I'd venture to guess that there still is not enough supply of shares to meet the ever-growing demand. And we're seeing that in a variety of Grayscale products. One being our large cap fund, which trades under the symbol GDLC, Grayscale Digital Large Cap Fund. And going back to your guys' point about diversification and is this an asset class beyond Bitcoin? We've seen a lot of uptake for the digital large cap fund because investors have increasingly been saying, I want exposure to this asset class. I can't pick winners. I can't pick, avoid losers. But if I can make one investment and get broad-based exposure, that would be a really attractive investment opportunity for me. So I think you're going to see more of that kind of broad-based allocation, although certainly no shortage of investors only wanting to invest in Bitcoin as well.